we're going to now return to a presentation from yesterday that was focusing on the Food and Drug Administration's evolving approach to food safety in what are, as we all know, very tumultuous times in the United States, which are having very severe, well, important repercussions abroad as well. So please do join me in giving a very warm welcome to Donald Prater, who is the Principal Associate Commissioner for Human Foods at the US Food and Drug Administration. Thank you very much.
Well, let me just say again, thank you. Thank you so much for all the kindness and concern that you all expressed yesterday. So grateful. I can't even tell you, it was quite extraordinary. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be back in front of you and talk a little bit about what's happening at US FDA. It is certainly a time of change for us, and one in which I think we will become more effective and more efficient in our mission. We're going to use tools, data and information predominantly, but also artificial intelligence, whole genome sequencing to do our work better. As a regulator, we have certain responsibilities to be able to assist with the production of safe food. Of course, the production of safe food is a primary responsibility of manufacturers and producers. We help through inspections and compliance. We're here today, I think, working in the frame of private audits and those audits that are conducted under the GFSI benchmark, which we believe are very powerful and actually underpin a large part of the global food safety system. We've had some experience utilizing these audits. A few years ago, I led a pilot at FDA. We looked at a number of the different schemes under the GFSI benchmark. We looked at those against our food safety requirements, and I can tell you they were very close. Some differences, but of course, national standards will always reflect some differences. But we were really encouraged about the value of those audits. And so we have given a lot of thought as we go forward, utilizing the new tools that we have in food safety. How can we leverage that data and information? Two of the biggest tools that we have now, whole genome sequencing, and maybe I'll tell you a couple of stories about whole genome sequencing and some of our experiences there, but also increasingly some of these what we call quantitative analytical techniques. Fancy way to say artificial intelligence. It's kind of a buzzword. I almost hate to use it in a presentation these days. It really includes so many different things. It includes machine learning. So a few years ago, I also led a pilot to look at our imports in terms of being able to predict the violations that we might see at import. When we have products coming in, and in the US, we import 14 to 15 million lines of food each year, it's extremely resource intensive to tell an investigator, go out, take a look at that shipment, open the box, take a sample, process that sample, and send it to the laboratory. If we see something, okay, then those efforts were validated. In many cases, we don't, which could be a very good thing, because that means it's safe food. But we want to be able to use our resources more efficiently and effectively. And so one of the things we learned from using machine learning is that we could actually increase our ability to predict violative shipments almost by twice. Now, if you think about it, the violation rate is very low. So if you increase it, if you double it, you've made a huge impact. You've utilized regulatory oversight resources a lot more effectively. And so machine learning is one of the types of quantitative analytical techniques that we're looking at. We're also looking at computer vision. Computer vision is a way to look at structured and unstructured data. Think about label reading. We have a lot of folks that spend time reading labels. Sometimes it's on a piece of paper, sometimes it's on a product, sometimes it's a visual image. But currently, we have a lot of people that look for violations on the labeling. Most frequent ones, allergen labeling. And so, not uncommon, probably not a surprise to most people here. How can we get better at looking for these things? Well, by using computer vision, you can actually increase the throughput by hundreds of times. And you can utilize these unstructured data fields to find those things that are potentially problematic. And yes, sometimes we will pull them aside and have a person actually take a look at those and to delve more deeply into the ingredients. But this is an example of how we'll do our regulatory work in the future. We'll be using data information. Other types of models that we're looking at things that include looking at weather, trying to be able to predict when we're likely to see violations. And all this was not so possible even 5 years ago. And so if you think how quickly, how far things are coming in the future, it's just incredible. It really is incredible. Being able to look at large data sets, and comparing and identifying thousands and thousands of points is really something that's doable now. Maybe even in the palm of your hand, you'll have some ability to use some of these artificial intelligence systems. But this is going to be so critical to how we do our work in the future. We'll be able to find the needle in the haystack. We'll be able to connect data points that we couldn't connect before. A lot of it is underpinned by sharing data and information. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I did learn through some of our pilots is that these models are pretty powerful and they will tend to skew pretty well. I mean, we've heard the adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you have bad data, you're not likely to get very good or accurate results. So we will spend a lot of time looking at data and making sure that they're the most accurate and representative. One of the terms that I hear from our data scientists, I'm not real comfortable, but I hear this term, cleaning data. It doesn't really sound right to me. It sounds like you're changing the data. One of the things that, as long as I've been at FDA, the data are the data. They have to be exactly whatever you saw or recorded. But in fact, I think in the days ahead, we will be looking at techniques to make sure that those data are high quality. And so if we're going to use these quantitative analytical techniques, we have to make sure that the data are high quality. And how do we do that? Well, we actually have techniques that utilize machine learning to be able to use to look at data. We have opportunities to generate what they call synthetic data, which can benchmark or compare and give you some idea about the outliers that might exist in your data. This is a different world. When I went to veterinary school, these are not things that I trained on, not tools that were generally available, but they are available to us now. And increasingly, they will become more and more available, and they will become how we do food safety in the future. And so one of the things we want to be able to do is to leverage the information in reliable third-party audits. I mentioned that those audits that are conducted under the GFSI benchmark, we have some confidence in because we've taken a look at those standards. But being able to unlock that data and information is really important. Audit certificates, I'll just take a moment here. Julian mentioned something about being on a soapbox, but audit certificates, incredibly important. Certification programs, this is the currency that allows the entire global food safety system to be able to unlock that value. And so I know some certification programs now are sharing, putting some of that information up online so that you can validate the authenticity of those certificates. I would encourage GFSI to continue to do that across all the benchmark schemes. It will be really important. If, as a regulator, we are to rely on that information in part, it won't be the only thing, but if we are to rely on it in part, we must know that it's current, that it's accurate, that it's authentic. And so I would encourage certification program owners, GFSI, to continue to work in this way, because these are some of the sources of data and information that we will use to do our job as regulators. We sit on a mountain of data at FDA. So we do inspections, we do sampling and testing. We've accreted many years of data. Sometimes these data are on the same facility. As you all know, facilities will come and go. Some facilities have been in operation for quite some time. So we have quite some information about these facilities based on our own work, being able to go into facilities and observe the production of safe food, to be able to sample areas and food, to be able to gather that data and information. Increasingly in the future, FDA will not rely solely on data that we have in-house, but will also rely on external sources of data and information. So these will be data that come from our state partners. In the U.S., we have a large network of our state colleagues that do very similar work. Sometimes our state colleagues do work on behalf of FDA, but these state partners also have laboratories, and they also go out and conduct inspections. And we're working very closely with them to share more data and information, because it will help us to all do better in the future. Our international regulatory counterparts. We have a number of regulatory counterparts that we've worked closely with over the years, sharing data and information. Products and ingredients are in global commerce, and sometimes they show up all over the world. And so being able to share data and information with our regulatory partners across the world, incredibly important as well. But now it sounds like we just want to gather more data. Give us your data. But it's not that. If we're going to be successful in the future, it's going to be important for us to not only take in data, but then be able to provide a value or a benefit to those that partner with us. And so in the future, we'll be sharing more analysis, more data, more analytics, more trends that we'll be able to see. If we're able to glean something, for example, through a longitudinal study, we have places that we know have recurring outbreaks that are tied to certain production areas. And we have invested in doing longitudinal studies in certain regions with the cooperation of producers in those regions, and we're publishing some of that information. But these longitudinal studies actually provide quite some insight into how pathogens circulate around in the environment. I always heard when I started at FDA, I heard it's about the water. Always look for the water. Follow the water. Well, I'll tell you, it's not just the water. It's the air. Sometimes, and in some cases, pathogens are moving around in the air. And so we are actually able to ascertain things there, looking at numerous data points to be able to learn certain trends. Those things that we learn, we'll be able to share back with the industry so that the industry can get better. One of the things of being a regulator is you have a purview across a variety of facilities. Sometimes hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of facilities. It's a very unique and special purview. But the more information we can learn and share, and I'm talking about sharing the analytics and things that are coming out, it will be important, and that will be the value add that our industry can expect. So, how are we going to do our work in the future? We'll use whole genome sequencing. There's no doubt. It's like a laser with respect to attribution. If you think about listeria infections, we are solving cases. It's just amazing. Sometimes these outbreaks, they're very small in number, and you see them over the course of years, sometimes decade. You'll see just a few cases here, a few cases there, but sometimes we can connect them and connect the dots and connect them back to facilities. And when you do that, it's really important and I think really valuable. So whole genome sequencing, an incredibly powerful technology. And when it comes to root cause analysis, I think WGS will continue to be an important tool. We operate something called the Genome Tracker Network. We have a lot of contributors to our Genome Tracker Network, and that's another form of sharing data and information analytics. It's available to industry colleagues, can take a look at it and see what we have uploaded into the Genome Tracker. We have more isolates from all over the world that are being added to Genome Tracker. One of the things that's also important there is metagenomics. So we talk about the metadata. Metagenomics, very important in the future, being able to utilize this information because that's the context in which these things sit. And so we will get better and more sophisticated in using those types of tools as well. So I'll stop there because I want to be able to take some questions. But I did want to share some of those things that we'll be using in the future at FDA, and we will be reaching out to try to engage with our state partners, with our international regulatory counterparts, and with the industry to appropriately share data and information. I say appropriately because it's important to be able to maintain confidentiality where it's the right thing to do. And we have different techniques that we can use to do that. So using aggregated data, de-identified data, anonymized data are some of those techniques that we have to be able to do that and to be able to use data sharing arrangements. And so we look forward to, we're just on the cusp of being able to explore some of those opportunities, but that'll be another important feature soon. So I'll stop there and happy to take your questions. And again, so happy to be with you, and thank you so much for all the kindness and concern that you showed me yesterday. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Donald. Well, I have a few questions for you, and if we have time, we'll put some. We've got some mics around for some questions in the room. I think one of the big messages here during this conference is this need for clarity, and as we're hearing, communication. And it will have escaped nobody in this room, obviously, that there's a lot happening at the FDA right now. And I think there's a lot of concern here. So could you talk us through what is going on at the FDA? I know the dust is just settling, but in terms of those layoffs and how that's going to impact your work.
Well, I'll tell you that organizations, are always undergoing evolution. We are undergoing some additional evolution now. There is an effort to realign and restructure our Department of Health and Human Services. The idea here is to streamline our operations as well as centralize some of our administrative functions. And so I think those are things that will be seen over time. And we will seek to become more effective and efficient. Some of the tools that I talked about are the tools that will enable us to do that. But certainly it's the environment that we're in now, I think will contribute to make us more effective in the future.
So there won't be any impact, because I was reading something from the former FDA commissioner, who's Dr. Robert Califf, who said unless there is some super plan, there is going to be an effect on safety. Can you reassure everybody here that that's not necessarily going to be the case?
Well, food safety is core to our mission. It will continue to be one of the core essential parts of our mission. One of the things we've done with our human foods program is really to try to realign more around those core functions. As I explained yesterday, organizing around microbiological food safety, food chemical safety, there's a lot developing in this space, as well as working on nutrition. So one of the things that is a current priority is to be able to address chronic disease and to be able to elevate the profile of nutrition.
Okay, so let's look at now at the work that is underway, and particularly home in on some of your priorities regarding kind of supply chains and ensuring the security of supply chains. What are you doing in that space right now?
Yeah, supply chain is extremely important. As we all know, as food safety professionals, these supply chains sometimes are long, they're very complex. Over the years, at different times, these supply chains, they change. There's different pressures in terms of costs and things. And so as a food safety regulator, I think we're always on guard for things that might change in our supply chain. So if producers and manufacturers need to source materials from different places for whatever reason, sometimes that's an opportunity for contaminants and new hazards to emerge, maybe in places we hadn't expected that before. Some of the tools that I mentioned, being able to share data and information and connect those dots will be really helpful. And I think one of the things that we'll be able to do in the future to help reinforce that is share what we're finding at the FDA.
Yeah, and as you say, collaboration is really key, and the FDA is undertaking a lot of efforts to enhance that collaboration with industry stakeholders, and notably through the GFSI initiative. Can you talk us through some of that collaboration that's taking place and some of the impact that you're seeing from that?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting as we're looking at the third-party private audits. As I mentioned, we did a pilot a few years ago, and we looked at the alignment of some of the certification programs I think they were all under the GFSI with respect to our national requirements. So you all will know we have the produce safety rule and we have preventive controls rule. We looked at those two, and what we found is that there's very good alignment. And so as we are looking at those third-party private audits, and there are thousands of these, hundreds of thousands. Isabel, I think maybe like 146,000 audits under the GFSI schemes. It's pretty amazing, and if you think about it relative to the number of inspections that FDA is likely to do, they're dwarfed by the number of third-party private audits. And so when I say that these do underpin the global food safety system, they really do. But we want them to have value. And so as we're able to share data and information, as we're able to look at these audits against FDA inspections, it's another way to say, if the standards are very closely aligned, then the outcomes ought to be pretty similar. And where they're not, then that's a place that needs to be explored a little bit more. And so there are lots of opportunities to make things better, make our inspections, our efforts better, to also potentially improve third-party private audits. So there's a lot of opportunities in the future, but we do recognize that those audits that are benchmarked under the GFSI scheme do have good alignment with our national laws, with the produce safety, the preventive controls rule, and that's reassuring. And figuring out how we can do that to continue to provide our oversight and protect consumers will be a really important thing to work on in the future. There's lots of data points out there, there's lots of laboratories, there's many samples that are being taken. I mentioned that at FDA we sit on a mountain of data, we take a lot of samples, but again, compared to what industry is doing already, if we can find a way to share data and information appropriately and be able to unlock that value, the whole global food safety system will get better.
As you say, and it's quality data that is so key when it comes to being able to work with the data properly and kind of get the right information at the right time. But everybody's job here, when I listen to all these conferences, come to these conferences and I listen to the conversations, is in some respects you're being asked to predict the unknown. You're being asked to step into a future and try and predict what might happen in terms of pathogens, what might happen in terms of risks to the consumer, as you're saying. So what are you looking out for now? What are the trends in terms of food safety concerns? Because we're seeing new food safety techniques that are being evolved, but also new ways of making foods. And so what are some of the key trends that are out there for you?
Well, I think there's always innovation in the food space. It's amazing to me. Sometimes I talk with my colleagues at FDA on the medical products side of the house, and I tell them about on the food side, we just have so many different products, so many different manufacturing techniques. I mean, consumers are really fortunate these days. You can get almost any kind of product you can imagine all over the world. You have fresh products, you have a variety of manufactured products, you have products that are tailored to those desires of consumers. The industry is just incredible. You guys are incredible in your innovation. I'll tell you, it's hard to keep up with, but it's important. And that innovation, being able to support that is an important trend. You asked, Isabel, about trends. And so one of the things that we are watching closely is different innovations in the manufacturing sector. Those new processes and techniques that are being used sometimes, they're things that we haven't seen before. Sometimes the hazards are the same. Sometimes we see old hazards in new places. But looking at innovation, we want to be able to support innovation. We want to be able to understand it and to provide that oversight. And again, that's an opportunity for collaboration and discussion. So we learn quite a lot.
Yeah, and as we've heard so many times, again, this is such a complex and fast-moving space. I want to hand the floor to you. Do we have any questions in the room for Donald? Yes, we do.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Claudio Gallottini with ITA Corporation. So thanks, Donald, to be back today. I'm very happy to see you. And my question is about audit. So until 2019, I'm conducting through the third-party accreditation final rule for FESMA regulatory audit. And obviously today we are in the house of third-party audit, but many times conducting also under the witness of ANSI third-party audit under this program, we discover sometime not a little but a big gap. So I think that from the FDA point of view, this is a very strong tool. And I would like to know from your side what you think about the future, about the implementation, about this type of regulatory audit delivered by accredited certification bodies also present in this floor today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudio. Good question. And I think at a certain point it gets to the value of audits. If we're going to rely on those, I mentioned the importance of being able to ensure about the audit certificate. That is certainly important. But I think as the standards continue to be refined, evolved, it's something that at FDA will need to keep up with as well. We know that there are a variety of audit standards, and so investing resources to be able to understand those audit standards and see how closely they align with our rules and see also what kind of outcomes. So one of the things that we're also monitoring very closely, recalls, withdrawals, those types of things, those are also data points that can be put together and examined in terms of facilities' ability to make safe food when we're not there. I mean, really, that's what we want. We want to understand when the auditor's not there, when an FDA inspector or another inspector is not there, what's the likelihood that a facility will be producing safe food? And so it's a little bit about prediction. And some of these models do help us to get at prediction. And the more data points that we have, the better those predictions will be. And where we predict that there's greater risk, that might be a place that will need more attention and might get a visit. The other place, or the other situation that might warrant a more frequent visit is when we don't have information. And so here's another challenge. One of the things I'm often asked to explain, again, thinking about the medical products side of the house, is how many facilities do you have? What's in your inventory, Don? Well, 125,000 or more domestic facilities. maybe double that, international facilities, hundreds of thousands of facilities. Every day, our inventory changes. There are food manufacturers, production sites that are going in and out of business every day. And so when we look at the frequency to which we might come and do our oversight activities, sometimes there could be a long period of time. We want to, of course, shrink that, but at any given time with a dynamic inventory, there's going to be something that's out there that we might not have as much knowledge about. And so we will be seeking to fill that gap. And one of the things we might fill that gap with is an audit. And where we don't have information, an audit or an inspection or something else, well, that might rise on the list to be able to have a visit. So,
thank you. Look, we've got about a minute and a half left. Do we have another question? And we can quickly take that. No, we don't. Okay, so I've got a very quick question for you. And that would be, what do you see as the most critical developments that are needed to ensure a secure and resilient food supply for the future? Now, you talked about obviously the important role of technology. Is that technology ready to transition and breach any gaps that are being created?
Well, I think we will benefit from technology. We will also benefit from other aspects of the food supply. And so, as you all know, we have a traceability rule that we made a final rule not that long ago. One of the things that still remains an Achilles heel of the food system is traceability. And so I think there's still considerable amount of work that needs to be done in this space. But in terms of being able to effectively remove products from the market, that's one area. When there is a problem, being able to work there. And I'll tell you, it's quite a bit more complex. When we adopted the Food Safety Modernization Act over 10 years ago, traceability was one of the things that we sought to tackle. And it is complicated. As food moves through the food distribution center, particularly those facilities in the middle part of the distribution center, traceability information is challenging to be maintained. But there's an opportunity here, and I think that's where technology can help us as well. So you've heard folks refer to blockchain technologies and things like that, where you have high level of integrity, extreme levels of speed. So there will be new tools and things in the future to be able to help us with traceability, but that's another area.
Thank you so much for your time, Donald. Thanks so much for speaking with so much clarity and so much generosity with everybody here and sharing your thoughts. A very warm round of applause. Thank you very much.